retrogrades.
How to re-evangelize the de-Christianized West.
Support us in any way you can, most especially by your prayers.
From an authentically Catholic perspective.
Right-minded, righteous group that's equal in strength to the radicals.
From an authentically masculine perspective.
You and your friends versus me and my friends. Bring it on. Welcome to Rules for Retrogrades. It's Tim Gordon here with Dave Gordon and Chris Plants. We are back today with another dating episode for you guys because this was promised not only to our patrons, but to our people out there that are watching and enjoyed our first dating episode, which was sort of crammed at the end of a multi-episode. So we're back here today to talk about, from the Catholic perspective, the overlooked, undercooked aspects of dating that lead to the vocation of matrimony. And they're overlooked for a particular reason. That's because they're very politically incorrect. So we're going to jump into it just now. Dave, Chris, how are you guys doing today?
Doing awesome, man.
Good. Yep.
Great.
So one thing I always mention that is, it's anecdotal, which isn't my favorite way of developing an episode or whatever. But this is such an overwhelming, consistent response that I get as a teacher of younger people, juniors and seniors in high school. Sometimes I teach, freshmen and sophomore in college. From parents, it's so overwhelming that it makes res ipsa loquitur. The thing screams itself. It makes its own case that, wow, this is at the heart of our cultural problem. And here's what it is. Of all the controversial things I've ever taught, Chris, I think you could speak to this as well. Abortion, contraception, divorce. Divorce has something to do with it. Any of the sex issues, none of them get parents in a politically conservative area worked up, except one. And I'm not kidding you guys out there. What's that one issue?
Dating young.
Dating young and doing what after you marry? What if a young man meets a young woman that he likes freshman year in college? What is the issue that's happening? Catholic family, pagan family, whatever, all around the country. What comes up? What do parents say when?
Don't get married until you have a career or something like that.
Right. And I mean, what does that mean? Since basically in our country we've turned all
delay a vocation. Delay
the vocation. If you meet someone that you like a lot, that you think is good, we're going to talk today. We're going to lay out the principle that, look, you're not meant to being delaying your vocation. If you meet someone that's good, it's you don't want to let that relationship rot on the vine without the graces of matrimony, which should come, 5 to 12 months after you meet the person. It doesn't. This is the normal course of a relationship. What if someone just started school in August and they're a college student? They met someone they like a lot. They go home for Thanksgiving this time of the year, and they're like, Mom and Dad, I met a girl in New York or whatever, Chicago, away at school. I like her a lot. And what advice are they getting from their? I'm sorry, not every single boomer, but most boomers, even ones that say I was never a hippie, I'm conservative. What are the baby boomers saying to these kids dating?
Take your time, basically. Don't rush in. Only fools rush. Or what song is that? Only fools rush in.
Elvis,
yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, Elvis.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically what they say. Yeah, and maybe they sing it. But I mean, the point is, this destroys relationships. And so today I want to get into is just what is insinuated, Dave, by the idea that in 95, 96, 97% of these young relationships, they're being instructed. I have 4 parts to this. This first part, I just want to talk about, where does this come from? Why do the baby boomers say this? Why is it such a strong presupposition in households that are religious, non-religious? Trads say it, I hear.
Well, I think back...
neocons, trads, pagans, everyone's saying it. How did this get so strongly vested that, hey, don't just... why not just get married as an undergrad in college? There's married student housing. It doesn't, whatever your parents are willing to pay for, if you're a single college student, if they're helping you with your education, which many parents do, I'm not putting pressure. But if they're willing to help you with that, they're willing to help you without it. If you're getting loans anyway and your parents aren't in the financial position to help you out in college, they should help you out anyway, right? Where did this come from for a little bit?
Well, you know how they say that all heresies are kind of truths taken to an extreme. If you do look at any of the old moral theology manuals, they do say that it's incumbent upon the bridegroom to have a way of supporting both himself and his bride at the time of marriage. Now, we talk about, disciplines that can change, whereas doctrines don't, right? And this is one of those things that has been kind of open to change in American culture and the culture of the West over the past 50 years, especially with the invention of the modern student loan system and the legislative passage of things like Pell Grants, right? So there's a couple points here that we should talk about. Number one, so there is a system of student loans which basically operates as a federal guarantee at the college level that you will have your education financed on an as-needed basis. So to say that, the students, they're not going to be able to make ends meet, they're not going to be able to afford to live or keep a roof over the head, it at the college stage is just absolutely incorrect. Now, if you are a student, if you are 20 years old and you do get married, then you are going to be, and I don't want to get too technical for the law stuff, but on your FAFSA, you'll be an independent after you get married, and then you're going to be eligible for certain grants and a higher strata of loans so that you can support both your wife and yourself while you're finishing up school. Now, part of the problem is that everybody's going to college now, right? So we're getting this delayed entrance into adulthood. It used to be back in the day when we were in a healthier time that you would go to high school, right? And you'd graduate and you'd maybe enter a trade or go into a factory, right, guys? But now with basically a universal call to college where everyone's going to college, right? Whether they're fit for higher level intellectual work or not. Basically everyone goes to college. The degrees are getting watered down. You get your, Chris, we were talking last time about underwater basket weaving. It tends to be the line that gets thrown around. But yeah, people are.
By the way, that does seem difficult, actually. I mean,
it would be tough.
How would you do that? Okay.
It's almost impossible to enter the underwater basket weaving workforce without a master's in that. That's from my experience.
The underwater basket weaving school is actually hard to get to because it's underwater too, which is it's problematic. There's just anyway.
Only a certain kind of person can do that. Dave, we should say from the outset that you did this, right? You got married in undergrad. I met my wife in undergrad, but we were both dating other people. I certainly would have done it. We didn't actually get any pressure from our parents not to. I don't think.
Yeah, and it's doable. So I'm not telling you guys to do something that I haven't done. Now, I knew I was going to go to a graduate program before I kind of made the call. So I was like, what, another 3 years of just dating? No, I can't stomach that. But yeah, so the thing that I'm really going for here is that the nature of the modern economy, where so many jobs call for college degrees, they're making young people feel like they have to put off their vocation so they can get a job. And that's not correct. And it's kind of a sick twist that comes with the expansion of the modern university system. And we need to adapt. If we keep applying these old moral theology book standards that were designed for a more industrial economy, where people would go into the trades right after school, after high school, and we're applying those in the modern age, what's going to happen is arrested development. People are not entering into their vocations in a timely way. They're kicking them off. They have, 4 years of dating. You get these weird monstrosity relationships that are 4 or 5 years long. And, that's really, really unhealthy. It's a temptation to sin. It's a temptation to fall into unchastity. And also, it's just not good to be in a non-committed, unavowed state for 5 years at a time.
Well, look, we should deal with some of those one at a time. Chris, I know you wanted to say something, but what I talk about in Catholic Republic, my first book on Sophia, is the idea that it's not necessarily in the popular mind that people are sublimating their vocation for their profession. It's that in this Calvinist country, Puritan Calvinist country, at its pop culture origins, there's been a supplantation of profession for vocation, and literally Max Weber talks about this in the spirit of Protestantism when he gives us this term, the Protestant work ethic, because in the Protestant mind, I think I talk about this in books chapters 4 and 5 in Catholic Republic. In the Protestant mind, there is no realistic means of quotidian grace, the seven sacraments. This is doing pop psychology, which I don't often do, but there's a need sociologically to surrogate for that daily grace. And in the Calvinist, in the Puritan mind, it happens through work. And so you have, even in American Catholics, think, hey, yeah, you get your daily grace through labor. And so there's a kind of subtle supplantation, because they are close. In the married vocation, your profession it's a support feature. It's a minor support feature for men, and it is for men. You got to labor. It's the curse of Adam. But except the main part of your day in your vocation, we'll talk about this in one of my later points here today, but your main vocation begins when you get home from a day of work. Right, Chris? I mean, this is a Protestant thing that Catholics have inculcated.
Tim, you and I have talked about this for years, because when we were working together, there was a lot of talk around the school from Catholics and non-Catholics that we were working with. We'd go to these meetings and they'd be like, hey, this is our vocation. All of us have a vocation to teach. And I remember we were walking out of the meetings, and I'd just be like, but it's not a vocation. Our vocation's to our family. I think that a lot of guys forget that. To an earlier point that you were making, your job is not, in the strict sense, your vocation. It's meant to support your family. So a lot of these guys are like, well, this is my vocation. I got to work till 7, 8, 9 p.m. at night. And it's like, yeah, but your job is supposed to support your family. You're supposed to be primarily with your family. I mean, after work and so on. So I do think that we need to get back to a proper understanding of the vocation, which is family, religious life. One of the things, I don't know, I couldn't track this historically. So maybe somebody else could, but because I have heard of like this ecclesial vocation that like theology teachers have. So now that the religious are not teaching in the Catholic schools, people would often say that, Tim, because you and I teach theology, we teach it on behalf of the bishop. We get the mandatum and so on. And so we have an ecclesial vocation that flows from. Yeah, and it's like you're trying too hard. It's a 9 to 5.
Vocation has to be sacramental. I mean, that's the basics.
Great. That's a great point. Yeah.
You pick a fork in the road for singles out there. We're going to get to this. I didn't want to do a whole profession show, but this stuff is really important to say as it pertains to Catholic dating and marriage. There's a sacramental fork in the road. Ordinarily, and through the course of life, people will pick one of the two sacramental vocations, and anything other than that is confusion.
Yeah, and so many guys, I think that their day job supplants their vocation, and they don't feel bad about it because they have intermingled the two. It's muddled in their own minds. It's commingled in their own minds. The idea of working a day job and toiling to earn bread, and it really has come to supplant a vocation. So they're not sitting around feeling guilty about defaulting on their vocation, because intellectually they're confused about what the nature of vocation is. Yeah, guys, your vocation isn't to be a lawyer or a doctor. It's to serve your family if you're a member of the laity, to get your wife to heaven, to get your kids to heaven, to instruct your kids, to love your wife, and to serve them, right? That's your vocation. That's how you serve Christ.
Procreate and educate.
Right, and love. I mean, procreate, love your wife, procreate, love your kids, and educate. All of your duties come from that primary duty of love, right? Of charity towards wife and offspring.
Which means what you do. This brings us back around to dating. I want to move this to the second phase of today's show. What you do for a living, how you earn a buck, as long as it's moral and lawful. Got to meet both of those. Doesn't matter. A talented person can change careers multiple times. My uncle told me that. It's good advice. A talented person that's multifaceted and a Renaissance man can change careers if he needs to do so. So your career is not something you get wed to, like this sort of Protestant is my term in Catholic Republic. This Protestant notion that comes from the 20s, 30s, 40s. It's nonsense. So
right. The vocation isn't yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, so that's the point. Like, if you have to shovel dirt in college as a young man, let's bring it back around to dating. I want to get to something I call the Jane Austen rules, like the Jordan rules, according to the late 80s Pistons. Just foul Jordan at any cost. We're going to talk about the Jane Austen rules. But first, yes, the point needs to be there that when a young man, let's say it's coming up, Thanksgiving break, a lot of young people around the country, freshmen and sophomores in college, will go home and they'll say, hey, mom and dad, I met this guy. Or let's say it's a guy talking to his parents. I met this girl. I like her a lot. We're a couple months in. We met her, let's say we met orientation a freshman year. First day we were there. We've hung out every day and things are going really well. They're going to get the admonition from the boomers, the boomerism. Okay, we'll just keep it friendly. You need to live your life. You need to travel before you get married. You need to marry. You need to get life experience. This is all a codified way of saying we expect that you're fornicating. It's fine that you're fornicating. Do anything other than getting married early. And a lot of times they'll couch it in, you got to be set in your profession, the way Dave or Chris said at the beginning of this show. So this is nonsense, because what the young man can do, all this career talk we did here today, it just goes to say, hey, during the school year, if a man can survive, a young man in college can survive on loans plus whatever help he's getting for his parents, and the young woman that he's courting can do the same thing, it'll be more economical if they decided to get married sophomore year of college, right? And they come together. Now, how to get to that point, right? And during summers, maybe the young man might have to go shovel dirt or something, even if he's bound to be a great scholar, a great white-collar genius, or whatever the parents always assume. Yes, he might have to shovel dirt during the summer to get from student loan in May to student loan in August. I did this in law school with 2 kids. Dave did it in law school with 2 kids. Okay, so what are the Jane Austen rules? This is how to date. And what I want to say here, I'll kick it to you, Chris, is there is no canonical status. Jane Austen wasn't a Catholic, but it comes from reading all her great novels. There is no ecclesial canonical status or preference. It's not even a thing given to boyfriend, girlfriend. That's not a real status. The only real vocational status, if you're going to be a lay person, married or unmarried. And this becomes really important for people when they're dating, because it's the secular humanist kind of Protestant Enlightenment culture that props up moral libertinism, sexual libertinism, that made having a boyfriend or a girlfriend into like a halfway status. It's a kind of home playing status where people are like, I have a boyfriend or girlfriend. Having a boyfriend or girlfriend doesn't mean anything. You're not committed until you're married.
Yeah. I remember when we were working together, talking to some of the students, and it was this big thing because someone was dating someone, and then they went off and started dating someone else, and I was like, what's wrong with that? Okay, so he's going on a date with this girl and that girl. I mean, there's nothing formal until, like Beyonce said, until you put a ring on it, until you make a promise, unless boyfriend and girlfriend status just means you've made a promise that you're eventually going to get married, but that's no longer boyfriend girlfriend, that's engagement. You made a promise, Genesis 12, and then when you get married, you upgrade it to covenants, Genesis 15, 17, and 22. It's the same thing that God did with Abraham, bringing him out of Ur. He made a promise to him, And then Abraham's like, okay, are you going to fulfill this promise? And then he upgraded all of them to covenants, which is precisely what we have in the church, which is you make a promise, you engage. A promise is not as strong as a contract, as a covenant. It's not even a contract. It's giving someone your word. So you're like, hey, I want to marry you, you know, and then finally you enter into a covenant where you exchange vows and you swear an oath. But yeah, there's no until you give someone your word, a promise, and then you upgrade it to a covenant. There's no official status. It seems to me. I mean, there
no official status.
Say, hey, we can just date exclusively. I'm right now I'm pursuing you, but we have sort of treated the dating or the boyfriend and girlfriend status as if it's something official, quasi sacramental or something.
You shouldn't lie.
They've gotten.
You shouldn't lie. No, you shouldn't lie.
If you're telling somebody I'm not dating someone else, that ought to be honored, and it's kind of part of the culture. So we don't need to totally repudiate this. Dave, you're going to say something. I just wanted to say the same thing with the for the Jews it was different, right? Betrothal, will you put a ring on it, was a different thing. It was more like being considered married then. But even now, if you get engaged to someone and you're like, I'm having second thoughts, it's better to be honest and say, hey, look, I made a mistake. What matters is the nanosecond that you become married. Then all of a sudden,
the word is just your
promise to God.
Yeah. But remember, you don't the engagement is like you're expressing a strong intention, but it's really the day of that's a covenant that can't be broken. Oh, well, it can be broken, but only death follows, mortal sin and death itself, you know? So, yeah, it can't be broken. So, yeah, the promise is, yeah. Anyways, I've already said it. Dave, go ahead.
I think you guys have touched on the point enough. Yeah, I was just gonna add.
By the way, I
do treat it like it's a sacrosanct union once you've made these promises to be exclusive of other people, and really, it's not. Being boyfriend girlfriend is not an end in and of itself. It's a means rather to the end of marriage. So everything needs to be ordered to marriage. Everything that you're doing in your relationship, it should always be looking ahead to marriage. Yeah. But we do have this sick kind of truism that's caught on with the boomer generation that kind of treats boyfriend girlfriend as its own status, as its own kind of final end, or at least as a long-term intermediate holding place, and that's just not what it is, right? It's supposed to be a transient state on the way to marriage in the system of Victorian courtship that we have at this point. It's not an end in of itself. It's not some special status that you get. The other thing is that I wanted to just briefly touch on was, I think, going back to what we were saying, is that the older generation is so adamant about people getting into people not getting married when they're younger and kind of being at this holding point of boyfriend girlfriend so that they can go explore themselves or explore the world, which is just, on a side note here, it's funny that exploration of the world and traveling has become a thing where it makes you smarter. Just going overseas and taking a vacation doesn't make you smarter. That's really caught on. I've seen, especially with young girls. After college, I'm just going to take a year and experience cultures or whatever. Going to France and eating some French food doesn't actually make you more intelligent. But that's neither here.
With foreign men.
Right.
That's all that means. It's still dirty.
Right. So it's a point worth noting, because I'm so sick of people saying experiencing a culture is this good end in and of itself. That's just one of those cultural points I want to get out there. But
the multiculturalists push it hard.
Sure. But the older generation has been so against getting married young because they point to these kind of the failures of their own generation when they look at people who got married maybe when they're 19, 20, 18, and they say, well, there's a higher divorce rate, so we're trying to protect you from yourself. It's not because you're getting married earlier that you were getting divorces. It's because the boomer culture was so secular and broken and despicable and faithless in so many ways. That's why you were getting divorced. The Blessed Virgin Mary when she bore Christ, when she was betrothed to Joseph, was she classically, I think tradition tells us she was a very young woman, maybe 14, 15. If you're holy, if you have the right values, if you are committed to your faith and to piety and to service of God, you can definitely get married young and make it work. And not just make it work, but you'll have those extra years to grow in holiness, so that, compared to the typical 32-year-old who's been married for like 1.5 years, if you got married when you're 20, you're going to have 10 more years of all these sacramental graces. But the boomer generation has been adamant that you have to forswear getting married young, but just because they couldn't hold it together, just because
Right.
they got divorced, because they had the sick culture, because they were faithless. We're not you. We
Right.
can do it. We actually believe. We believe what we profess. And and that's a message for all the young people out there. If you believe in your faith, if you're really trying to serve Christ, if you love your bride, you're going to make it work. You can do it.
We do not come to treat with Sauron, faithless and accursed, as Gandalf tells the Mouth of Sauron. This is how I feel talking about dating with a lot of these boomers. It's like, no, we in this generation, not so much Gen X, but the millennials and the Zoomers especially, they saw the filth of widespread fornication that was being christened, or attempted to be christened, by the boomers, and we don't want it. What people want is to get married young, and the boomers will say, "Oh, that's just so if you're a religious person, that's just so you can have sex." That's part of the rightly ordered desire that's being constrained and bounded. It's a bounded function, and it's partly incentivizing getting married young. That's absolutely what.
Can I just break in real fast? I have a quick point to make on that, because this is something that's been buried. One of the licit ends of sexuality the church has always taught is to relieve concupiscence. So I've noticed, and just throw it out there, I've noticed for modern women, of a feminist bent, and maybe for a lot of emasculated men who swallow these lies, it's very, it's anathema to feminists to be like, well, you're just using sexuality to relieve concupiscence. But that's always been what the church has taught. So to relieve concupiscence, and Paul says it's better to get married than to burn with desire, right? So that's definitely illicit. And I just want to throw that out there.
Well, of course, and it also stands to common sense. I mean, and all the appetites rightly ordered are good. This includes the sexual appetites. This is Thomas Aquinas. And so if you're rightly ordering your sexuality toward, hey, I want to get married, it's unnatural to date someone for 5 years anyway. Even 3 years is too long. This is all part of what I'm calling the Jane Austen rules. Think about Pride and Prejudice or Sense and Sensibility. Great novels. I especially like Pride and Prejudice. Sense and Sensibility we'll go with here. There's the dating process, the courting process is not pseudo-exclusive. It's not pseudo-guaranteed the way our playing house culture of I'm a boyfriend, girlfriend. This is an official status. It's not an official status. If a girl is dating a guy, especially if it's been for a long amount of time, he has no guarantees. All's fair in love and war. And this comes through beautifully in the novels of Jane Austen, or really any of the Victorian or earlier era novels about this stuff. It's, a girl will have multiple suitors. They will come to the parlor and sit in a somewhat uncomfortable, almost job interview kind of sequence, with oftentimes the marm there, or one of the sisters, or several of the sisters. And literally multiple gentlemen, young men, are coming and courting a beautiful young lass or whatever for as many meetings as they can get if she's much sought after in the English countryside. I'm thinking of a particular scene in Sense and Sensibility. Beautiful movie, the 95 retelling of that movie. And yes, she can date multiple men at once, because this is all about complementarity. Men and women are attracted to each other. And yet you get the best. The next thing I want to talk about is, well, so how much personal, how much do we have to be compatible? How much personal intercompatibility must we have in order to get married? I think that's an important question a lot of people are wondering about. But first, because all these, you have the Myers-Briggs and all these personality tests. Myers-Briggs say, oh, if you're an EFTJ or whatever, that might not even be one of them. You should not marry an INFP or whatever. They say this stuff like it's a kind of astrology. There, you do want the best match, which is why in the Jane Austen rules, yeah, hey, Colonel Brandon got 2 meetings in a row. Yeah, and then I forget what the neighbor's name is. Willoughby comes and he's zooming in on the beautiful young lass, and they don't know that. See, men have this contestant spirit, so it's good for them, and it hurries the process along. If a young woman might be receiving suitors from multiple men, and now I don't think we can go back to this era. But it would be good, and this is what was so sexually healthy about it, is the only way a young man could lock it up, Chris is quoting Beyonce, is to put a ring on it and then to marry the young woman. And all I'm saying is it's about complementarity. Young men and young women, we'll talk about this more in a second, they're attracted to each other. You want a head start by having good compatibility. But the secular world that tells you need to date every girl in the world before you can ascertain whether or not your compatibility is sufficiently high is nonsense.
It's easy,
nonsense.
Right? It's easy to tell if you're compatible. There's 3 ways. It really is this. Are you attracted to this person? Number 1, physically and on conversationally, emotionally, right? Number 2, do you have the same morals? Do you have the same system of values? Number 3, do you enjoy being around them, and therefore, as time progresses, love them? It's that easy. Now, I hear guys today, they've been, in a lot of ways, brainwashed by feminist propaganda, and feminists have been driving home this point that beauty is a myth. There's a book out there called The Beauty Myth, and they're saying that it's a beauty as this notion of an objective value on appearance is something that was crafted by the patriarchy to control and constrain women's bodies and freedom. So that's the lie out there by feminists. So they very much cast aside beauty as something that shouldn't be focused on. It's a relic of a bygone age. It's not objectively there. And of course it is objectively, beauty is an objective thing. That's why God is truth, beauty, goodness, right? So it's the most objective thing. It's something we can describe the divine essence as being the highest beauty, right? Or pure beauty itself. So there is beauty. Men, it's not shallow, as we've been taught, to want to be attracted to your bride, to see someone who's beautiful and want to court them. It's actually a good thing. Beauty is, it's built into the universe to tell us who would be a suitable mother and that would provide viable offspring for us, or with women, who would be a father who's going to provide you and with viable offspring and be able to provide for them and protect them. The traits that we find attractive for the respective sexes all have to do with how good that member of that sex is going to be at doing their vocation. So women with a nice hourglass figure, and like heaving bosoms or whatever, it's that they're going to be able to nurse the baby's going to be able to latch on well. The hips are something that God has designed to help women carry babies. They can hold them on their hip instead of just using their upper body strength, which is less than men's. So to look upon someone's appearance is something that's designed into the order of the universe. It was given to us by providence to be a good thing, to tell us who is fit and viable as a potential parent for your offspring. So it is in no way shallow to want to be attracted to your mate. It's a good thing. And I do get that question a lot. I've heard it a lot from guys, younger men growing up in this culture. Like, am I just being shallow? I'm not really attracted to this woman. I'm going on a date with her. It's like, well, if you're not attracted to someone, don't go on a date with them.
You actually hear that? You guys actually hear that?
Yeah, surprisingly.
I don't hear it with people dating. I mean, most people, I think, intuitively know that, because it's just a prominent part of the dating natural law. You want to be with someone, especially guys with girls, but girls also with guys, that you're attracted to, it's a big head start. It's a much bigger issue, I think, for married people after they've been married for a while. Like, oh, is it fine that I'm not attracted to my spouse after 10 years? That's normal, right? We became world weary. We have to tend to the kids and all that. So neither of us exercise anymore. That's normal, right? It's not. It's not. It's normal to have those temptations toward complacency. But women out there, we said this in the last show, if your man is not actively seeking you and seeming attracted to you, and if you know in your heart of hearts that you've let yourself go a little bit, that's fine. It happens to the best of us. But you need to recover from that, because if the man's not complaining, something is awry. I don't mean complaining harshly or saying it rudely or whatever. I mean, if he's okay with it, there's probably a pornography addiction. It's part of nature that just as the man originally was attracted to you and sought you out, he needs to continue to be attracted to you in marriage and seek you out. I was going to do this point last, but it came up naturally now. Right, Chris? I mean, that you need to be seeking out your wife and attracted to her every day of your life. Or men who are very visually stimulated, they need this. They need to be attracted to their wives. And if you fell off the bike,
but also
right, get up and start in. Yeah.
Your point about pornography too, it's incumbent upon the man too to stop the pornography addiction, because it's gonna make it difficult for him also to feel attracted to his wife or the other. It's just gonna make it tough. So she can't keep up against, she can't match up against all these women that he's looking at on the whatever screen, so it's teamwork.
Well, I think set realistic goals. Yeah, I don't know what the quality of the women are, right? I mean, none of us here look at pornography, so, but no, I mean, it's not an unrealistic. The danger in saying that. See, I've heard that Catholic critique of pornography as a secondary or tertiary thing, and I get what people are saying. I get what you're saying, but I think it's actually kind of misleading. I mean, I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's realistic to be thin. It's realistic to be thin at 40. It's realistic to be thin and 50. I don't actually. That's not actually the reason it's bad. It's bad because it's a mortal sin, right. And you'll die and go to hell if you get in a car accident right after looking at pornography. So I'm saying kind of the opposite. Women and men should make themselves look like, I guess, if to look like a porn star is a good thing, without acting like a scumbag, I think they should try to make themselves look as good as they can.
Sure, as good as they can. I think that's one of those critiques that's really metastasized into something that's now like a catch-all. And you just hear kind of the bitter, frumpy women of the world saying, "Oh, I'm not going to be able to look like this porn star. It's an unrealistic standard." But it's like, well, yeah, but you have muffin top. We're not talking about having, heaving bosoms that are obviously
you actually said artificial. Heaving bosoms.
Sure. But I was going on to add the modifier. No, I know. That's fair point. Fair play. To add the modifier, like a obviously silicone-based heaving bosom with a fake tan all the time, with, MAC makeup on and fully done up with your hair in an updo and wearing, heels around the house to vacuum on a Tuesday. Sure, that might be, you can't hold to those standards all the time, or obviously with, the plastic surgery, nor should you be indulging in these kind of trifling vanities. What we're saying is, but that doesn't mean you can't be thin and have an athletic build. There's this false dichotomy between just being purely slovenly with muffin top rolling over the skinny, what are they, the yoga pants that all the apparently women at Walmart cram themselves into so you can see the cottage cheese butt when you're shopping and get unappetized. There's a difference between.
Well, I don't go to Walmart, by the way.
Well, must be nice. Living the dream.
My appetite. Yeah.
So there's a difference between being I'm going to totally let my physique go, and then being it's unrealistic to have double D chest with a fake tan all the time and perfectly coiffed hair. But
and
the other
3% body fat, that's not necessary. So I mean that's nice because it incorporates Chris's point. There's validity to it. It's like, yes, not every day of the married vocation is going to be a lived out male fantasy, which is actually fine. I think, Dave, you want to do a show on this coming up. I don't want
male fantasies.
Well, you're talking about what's okay and what's not okay in the bedroom. I feel like we're becoming the Catholic love doctors. I want to get back to doing some church current events, but I guess this is part of the feminism book we're writing. But yeah, there's validity to what Chris is saying. You don't have to have 3% body fat and a fake tan and be ready in a superficial way to always be the instantiation of a male fantasy. But it's good enough just that you take care, men and women, that you take care of your frame. It sends an important emotional point to your partner. Like, hey, I care about you. I'm trying to please you. This is, I think, a Hegelian point. I never thought I'd quote one, but I saw this point on love. No, people don't read Hegel. It's bad stuff. You desire the desire of the other, right? That's what true love is it's at least a part of it. You're desiring the desire. And when someone keeps themselves in shape for you, not only is it very important to men with women. I can't speak exactly to how important it is for women with men because I'm not a woman, but you desire the desire of the other. In both cases, it shows this person is still trying. When we give people a total pass and say, oh yeah, by the time you're 40 with a bunch of kids, you're both going to look like complete hell. I mean, that's not good. That's depressing. And that enables the culture of staying single if you want to stay half dignified looking to be propagated and go forward.
Well, it makes sense that that's the look in the culture of self-love and narcissism, right? Is that people would rather, they don't care about looking good for the other, they'd rather cram another cheeseburger down their gullet, right?
Yeah. Perfectly realistic to say, hey, don't be a glutton. You need daily, just for my mind to work, when I'm writing, I teach them every day. We do one of these shows half of the days now. I need just going on the run, which is, I'm not like a runner by nature, but going on a short half-hour run or going and lifting weights for 45 minutes clears my mind. It clears the cobwebs out. So it's part of living a balanced, temperate life to stay fit anyway. It's just an important question because there's a balance. This is the main third point I wanted to close with tonight, is the question of, I was getting questions from a couple young women that are on the hunt, that are single. Some of them are patrons, some of them aren't, just getting DMs saying, well, so if all men and women are complementarily attracted to each other, does this mean it doesn't, that personal compatibility doesn't matter at all? I'm making fun of Myers-Briggs personality compatibility tests. No, of course it matters some, right? When you're on the hunt and you're dating, let the Jane Austen rules rule. Which is to say, yeah, court a bunch of people and go for the best. It gives you, it's like a starting, a head start in a foot race, But then the counterballast is, once you do pick someone in the married vocation and you've made a promise to God, this is your path to heaven, is this person you pick. This woman, for women, this man. So now you're with them. So
and they become the best for you. They become, it's like the sorting hat theory in Harry Potter, right? So Harry Potter becomes a Gryffindor because he chooses, he doesn't want to be a Slytherin, even though the hat would put him there. And it's the same with your spouse. If you
can become the
you
best.
Grow in love. Yeah, you grow in love with your spouse.
As long as you keep trying and you're not becoming complacent, right? There's this balance from, in the dating paradigm, go for the best one, right? Get the very best person. Yeah, it's not just any mate, because now you're free. You have a choice. But except once you're married and you've made this promise, your horizons, as the European scholars love this image, your horizons narrow, and all of a sudden you've picked this one person, and so the confines are all about, okay, I can't just pick the best ice skater in the world anymore. You could have done that before you made a promise to God. Now, this person, if it's really important that they're an ice skater, you say, hey, let's go ice skate or whatever. Or that's probably not really important to anyone sane that didn't already pick an ice skater. But what you could say is, okay, look, it is important to me. It should be important to everyone, health and fitness. So now we're working within the confines of this person. Maybe they do have a slow metabolic system, so losing weight is extra hard for them. Fine. So you want them to be, at the very least, the expectations are a little bit more particularized to that realistic. So now you say, okay, we want this person to be the best version of themselves. So now you go from pick anyone in the world, you owe no one anything until the day you're married. This even includes engagement in, I think, the Catholic book. Go ahead and be really picky. I wouldn't be super picky if you're meeting good people, because the older you get, the harder it gets. But that's your choice when you're dating. But now the paradigm shifts once you're married. When you say I do, that nanosecond, now it becomes 70s song, love the one you're with, right? Now the boomers can, now you got to work within the confines of that, and it's your Dave's analogy or whatever. Does this make sense, Chris?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, the tips for dating into marriages, you have to do marriages much like dating as is realistic. So you want to court your wife, you want your wife to be impressed by you. It's not just the physical stuff. The physical stuff is an instantiation of the emotional stuff. You just want to still be showing, hey, you're the only one for me. I think Dave said this last show. It's not realistic for a woman to say, only have eyes for me if she's completely given up. Now, it's still a moral demand that she technically has the right to make, or a man, if he's 400 pounds. You could, I guess, delimit the other person and say, Jesus, our Lord, says that if you look at someone of the opposite sex with lust in your heart, it's a mortal sin. So they shouldn't do it. But you can't really demand, if you're 400 pounds, especially with no excuse for being 400 pounds, that the person's looking at you admiringly. That's the feminist myth, and that is what's so toxic for marriage. I think a lot of young men out there that are married young men and are like, I've only been married 5 years. My wife's already kind of letting herself go. I think we're doing a big service for all these people. We're not trying to be macho. This isn't the Catholic Andrew Dice Clay. I'm just saying, real marriage advice, I've been married almost 15 years, is for both parties to be aware, like, hey, if I let myself go, I'm letting the other person down. And if you have let yourself go, get back on it. Just get back on the sticks. Exercise. Even cardiologists say, 5 or 6 times a week for a half hour.
If you sign up to support Tim at $1,500 a month, he will write a workout program for you, and he'll be your personal trainer, and he'll check in, and he'll also offer nutrition advice. Right, Tim? Wasn't that one of the tiers?
I think Dave's doing something closer to that with his Patreon account, aren't you? I'm not that. What are you doing, Dave?
Yeah, thanks I was going to take it there at the end. I do want to do, because I've gotten so many questions just being on, again, a campus at a Newmanless school, as I've said in a couple of the previous episodes, where guys who are just fairly clueless about how to date right, are coming up with these cockamamie ideas, and I see it, and I'm having to counsel them and kind of tell them, like, look, this is how you do these things. This is how you build attraction with a young lady. This is how you court a young lady. So I was going to say, to offer my services, maybe to a certain level of my Patreons, or if somebody wanted to approach me or direct message me on Twitter, of how to do the dating game right as a Catholic by staying moral, staying chaste, but also how to build attraction with young ladies and how to bring back these classical modes of courting women that aren't corny. A lot of guys are doing corny things. They'll go write a poem on the second date, and that scares a girl away, right? They call 6 times for when they're not getting a hold of their love interest, and that scares a girl away, right? They'll send text messages or allow the girl to not pick up a call, but then have an prolonged text message conversation with them to keep it at this arm's distance, pushing the guy away type thing. That's not classical, it's not polite, it's not cordial to men. They kind of let themselves be led around instead of taking the reins, and as the leader of a future possible marriage, they're not taking the reins as men, which is unattractive to women also. they're going on lunch dates to coffee as opposed to dinner dates to a restaurant. They're right, dinner dates. No, to like I'm thinking of like a classical Italian restaurant setting with like one candle where you're like slurping one noodle of spaghetti and ending in a kiss or whatever.
Are we dogs in this situation?
Yes, Lady and the Tramp.
Are we citing Disney movies?
Yes. No. So
and also, yeah, go on.
Also, he has to be a stray. You have to be a stray.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so there's this niche out there. We want to. I want to help young Catholic men find their vocation and do it right. And a lot of times, you can't just chalk it up to it's another theme that we've been harping on, right? You can't just say I'm going to pray and everything will be okay. You have to do your part. And to find your spouse, you have to hit the weights to make yourself attractive. You have to learn how to shave. You have to learn how to like wash your face and have good hygiene.
You have a shaving cut there, Dave? I think I see a shaving cut. Just kidding. You need to know.
Sometimes I go and I see the faithful, and it's like there's dandruff flakes on your shirt. It's like you need to learn hygiene. You need to learn how to groom. You need to learn how to lift weights. You need to learn all the man skills. You need to learn how to fight. You need to learn how to shoot a gun. You need to learn how to talk to a woman, how to be a polite gentleman, how to open a door, how to pull out a seat, how to dress for a date. These are all things that young men have let go by the wayside in the faithful camp, right? And we need to bring them back, and there's a real need there. So, I'm going to offer my services to my higher level Patreons, and
careful with how you say that, by the way. You're going to offer your advice.
Right. Yeah, I'm not like what is it?
Not a gigolo. Not a gigolo. You're a happily married man.
Gigolo, I have no idea. It seems like it would be a hard G, but anyway, if you are interested, hit me up by direct message on Twitter, and maybe we could work something out. It's just a thought.
Advice. Yeah. Advice. Yeah, I think the Protestant Enlightenment dating culture hit religious people and anti-religious people in different ways. The anti-religious people, just like Chris was saying last show, just got off board at just lift weights nonstop. They get obsessed with how many ounces of chicken to have with dinner, and it's just all about sex. It's just all about. They're like cats and dogs. They're vile and disgusting, right? It's like animals. But then the way that the Protestant Enlightenment misunderstanding of vocation, the married vocation, and how to prepare for it, courtship, hit the religious people, went off the other way. It's just, say a prayer, and you're gonna. I mean, I'm not saying don't say a prayer to a novena to Saint Joseph. I'm finishing up one now for another reason. He's the great patron saint of wanting to find your chaste spouse. But you got to do. That's the easy part, honestly. I mean, honestly, that's the easy part. I know you guys out there are not used to hearing people talk like that, but praying's the easy part, right? You say a prayer and it's done. It's a holy wish. It's a christened wish. The hard part is you actually have to you got to put in the work. Dave listed a bunch of don'ts. I thought of one do. Here's something that actually works for young men. This is a hot tip. Okay, when you are dating a girl, or when you are maybe in a college setting, in a study group in class, the way a lot of people are meeting someone.
Be handsome.
If you are not, be as handsome as you can. No, if you're talking to a girl and you're not getting a bunch of, from her end, what girls call inside jokes, then there's probably no interest. This is with 99% of girls in inchoate relationships, even friendships that might turn into a romantic relationship. Very common phenomenology of the relationship in college. 99% of girls express inchoate intimacy through something they call an inside joke, right? And usually inside jokes aren't funny at all. Usually an inside joke is like, remember how that one lamp was stained? And then they'll just, if the girl likes you, she'll send you, a bunch of emails about a stained lamp. And you're like, this isn't really funny at all. But I'm very happy because this is a very healthy way of a technically platonic girl of showing her readiness or availability to go to take it to the next level. Take stained lamps. So that's one that's very common. If you're not getting this, see, guys have to understand how to read signs. If you're not getting that, then there's probably no interest, because it's the easiest way of expressing inchoate intimacy. These are
Chris laughed. I'm wondering
what's up, Chris?
Yeah.
No, just the stained laugh. Or the stained
Or whatever.
lamp. The stained
Something
lamp.
completely arbitrary.
Stained lamp.
You have a orange stained laugh.
Is that how you made it happen?
By the
with
way,
your spouse,
Dave, I
Chris?
like that you're supporting. Is that Trent Horn's book behind you? Why We're Catholic?
Oh, is it? I don't know.
Yeah, that is. Trent
John
gave me that
Walker.
book. Trent gave me that book when we debated. All right, here's a little bit of support for Trent Horn. I'm going to address it now rather than letting it go to the comments. So, one thing I think Trent Horn was definitely right on. Again, retrograde way. We have. I know Dave and I have at least researched this. Trent did a great job researching the following topic, and I think he went against Father Chad Ripperger on the issue of. Dave brought it up as an analogy once here. Harry Potter. I know people are expecting, because they associate me with traditionalism, hearing me condemn this. People, if you go listen to Trent's podcast on Harry Potter, where he says, look, I'm going to research this. He did a ton of research, and there is simply little or closer to no evidence for the claim that Harry Potter is really,
I think we should have
really
Trent
evil.
on. I think we should have Trent Horn on just on the Harry Potter thing.
Yeah, maybe we should. You know what? I think that would be cool.
And we'll make a deal. Don't talk
he
about
did-
anything. Let's just talk about Harry Potter.
No doctrine. No changing.
doctrine.
No, I mean,
Chris,
maybe,
what's
hey, I
your
don't-
take on Harry Potter? I've never heard Chris's take on.
Well, we don't.
I-
We can do it with Trent Horn.
Yeah, we'll
what's
do it
up?
with Trent Horn. We'll do it.
What's up? Yeah, because if you haven't looked into
Yeah, I
it,
don't mean to
Dave
derail.
and I have looked into it, and Dave made the analogy. It's funny. What's up, Jesse and Terry? You guys are good fellow Californian homies. I love you guys. One time I was being interviewed on their show. They do like a 3-hour show, Virgin Most Powerful, and they'd done like the first hour on how Harry Potter's evil. And it's a prudential issue, guys. So there's no doctrine on this. We can disagree. That's, I guess, probably the most important thing to say. They've done an hour on how it's evil. I went on, and I think I was on Catholic Republic that I was interviewing. I happened to, in the middle of it, make a fat 30-second Harry Potter analogy, just like Dave did. And I don't even think it's good literature or whatever. I'm just not against the books and movies. I don't think it's evil. So I made one because let's pretend it was Dave's sorting hat analogy. And they got quiet, and then they told me after we got off, like, we'd just done an hour on how that's evil, and we're bringing you on as a... The point is, it's a prudential issue, not perfectly clear, but the church does not teach the way trads are now kind of talking like,
So what's the problem
it's not on
with
the
Harry
index.
Potter? What's the problem with
They-
Harry Potter?
They say it's demonic. We should really bring Trent on. I think that's a
We
good
have
idea.
derailed.
What did
Well,
Harry
you
Potter
made
and
the
Dave.
analogy.
I'm just kidding.
Let me
made
just
the
save people. So you made the analogy to the sorting hat. People are
Right.
going to be barking. I mean, they are, because when this is premiering, you said it about 25 minutes ago. I timestamped it. Yeah, and so people were probably barking about 25 minutes ago. People, it's a prudential call. This is not the the codex or the index, the dreaded Roman index. It's not on there, and so it's also not tremendously important. But Trent Horn's podcast on it was very informative. Normally, I would tend to agree with I think it was Father Chad Ripperger. I think more often than not than with Trent Horn. I think that's safe to say. But I think Trent did a really good research job, and I called it out. It's something we don't all have to agree on that issue anyway. But yeah, so that's one tidbit of dating advice that's an affirmative. You hear a lot of negatives. The negatives are important because cautionary examples are do not do's that are sure ways to flub up your date right at the beginning. You've got one, and more important, the Jane Austen rules. Once you get that girl, once you win that girl and you're dating, if you think you're good for each other, you ought to be looking at 4 to 10 months, right, before you get into a short engagement, right, or whatever works for you. We are talking a matter of months, not years. That is the
Tim,
only Catholic way.
How long were you and Steph dating before you proposed?
Steph and I were dating because we were friends first.
Oh,
It was we have an interesting story. We were friends first, and we're Steph actually dated a friend of mine for a long time. I was dating lots of girls in college, and basically the way that I'm talking about here, more or less, just trying on a lot of different personalities. And so we ended up, it was very, very, very Wedding Singer, if you've seen that Adam Sandler movie, kind of thing, except they were never engaged or that serious. So we began dating it was about a year before we got engaged. It was about 1 year, depending on when you count the beginning of our relationship.
But did you know as soon as you guys started dating that you wanted to marry her?
Well, yeah, by the time I told Steph that I even had feelings for her, I told her and her ex-boyfriend at the time, who they were kind of, we were all friends. It was my friend. So I told them at the same time, so there'd be no funny business, no subterfuge, nothing underhanded. I said, hey, you guys keep breaking up and getting back together. We're all in the same friend group. So I told them at the same time, I said, hey, I'm just putting this out there. You know, I'm about to graduate college. But I'm in love with Steph. And boom, I walked out the door, and I just dropped that out there. And then that helped them to quit breaking up and getting back together, because she was in love with me as well. But it was a tumultuous time in a different way that we were dating, because all of our friend group kind of responded to this, and it was a very romantic thing. But at the same time, it was a tumultuous time. We didn't start dating right away. That was in April. We didn't really start dating until that summer, though we were best friends already. So it was.
Hey, by the way, you and Dave had a radio show, didn't you, in Bakersfield together?
No, Dave would come on sometimes with our older brother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It was you and the other brother. Okay. I was talking to someone about it who's going to interview you in a week or so, and I was like, I think you had a radio show. Okay, so cool. So it was about a year, and then you guys got
yes. So it was about a year. Yeah, and then we got engaged, and you don't need a long engagement. I wish we hadn't even done a 6 or 8 month engagement. I wish we'd done shorter, but because you don't need that. And especially the best place to meet someone is in college. People, last thought out there: if you meet someone in college, be prepared to get married in college, or don't date. But you don't want to not date, because if you're pretty sure, if you've discerned, I don't think the cloth is for me as a young man or a young woman going to be a religious woman or not, then you want to get priests started on their vocation as early as possible, and nuns, and you want to get young single people on their vocation as early as possible, because like Dave said, grace is cumulative supernaturally. Situation A, you wait, and let's say you're not even fornicating throughout all 4 years of undergrad. You meet an orientation freshman year. Situation A, you wait to satisfy all the boomers out there. Well, you're not getting all those graces, so that means you're going to be having fights you wouldn't have otherwise had. If you get married a year in, then that means that for a sophomore, junior, senior year of college, you're becoming more personally holy, because it's one of the sacraments doing that, and your relationship is becoming sanctified. It means less fights. That's the reality of the sacraments, right? So it's better, even if with the 3% of the population that dates someone 4 or 5 years without fornicating, which almost never happens. Plus, you cultivate all these habits together, better habits. Young men who get married young never get the lecherous habits. Young women who get married young never cultivate the lecherous habits.
That's true.
And you grow up together. There's beauty in growing up together from teens to adults.
I was reading Thomas A. Kempis this morning from my spiritual reading, and he said that a long life can be good, but it's also bad because you build up more and more guilt towards the end of your life, so you have a longer lifespan to be judged on the last day, which is dangerous. True. But to your point, it's also true too that if you're single and you're living a bachelor life, especially an unholy life, you form a lot of bad habits. So by the time you've been single, you've been living on your own for 15 years, and then you get married and you're like, I have to share my life now with somebody, and I've got all these bad habits. And
my things. You have to share your things. Men get so grabby, and that's mine. Don't come.
That's one of the good things about a big family too. You just gotta learn to work with multiple personalities, share things. Same thing with marriage. So.
Amen. All right. Well, that's good. Let's call that a wrap. And everybody out there, if you're married, love the one you're with, right? Make it work. And you do this largely with superficial things. You got to hit the weights, got to do little thoughtful things for each other. You got to stick with them. You love the one you're with. If you're not married, make yourself a really, really eligible bachelor or bachelorette, and go find someone holy and marry him shortly thereafter, and have lots of kids. Okay,
right.
and follow us on Patreon. Dave's making this offer. Chris, follow Chris on Patreon. Follow me. Oh, we got some new music, so check out our Patreon page right now. You guys have a good day. God bless.
Cool.
Rules for Retrogrades. Oh, I want to kick a shout out again to carryyourcrosslifestyle.com. These are good people with good shirts, good stickers, and paraphernalia. It's cool stuff. So go there, check them out.
Any Patreons you want to shout out to?
I did it last time, and I don't know. I don't know if people want their names or not. If patrons want me to mention
here's your name
names,
to 10,000 people.
Right, and here's your number too, and address. We'll dox you if you become a patron. How does that sound? No, and also everyone. Also, you can follow 30 extra minutes a week times two episodes by Mike Church's paywall. Go to Crusade Radio Network. We do 2 special content, premiere only there shows that we don't air anywhere else.
That last one was
Church.
really good. People should hear that.
We're about to do another one right now.
Yeah.
After I hit.
Yeah.
Okay. Peace, people. Rules for
All right.
Retrograde out.
Out.
Mamba out. It's Kobe
Mamba
Bryant.
out.